Hello and welcome. I'm so excited that you are here, especially if this is your kind of first foray into the Quick Start Clarinet ecosystem. Then it's even more exciting and you're starting in exactly the right spot because this is going to be a big overview of kind of my core teaching philosophy that's going to be the most helpful for you. And this is the kind of stuff that makes the difficult things easy without talent or 10,000 hours before you can be an expert in the clarinet and music. And there is a reason that talent is in quotation marks, and we'll be talking about that a little bit later as we go. So let's start off with why you're here and what you're going to get out of this. So if you're a clarinetist, hopefully you're a clarinetist. I assume you're a clarinetist if you're watching this, and if you aren't a clarinetist, it might be interesting, but mostly for clarinetists, and you're looking for less frustration from kind of fighting the same problems day in and day out, whether it's squeaking when you're crossing the break, or undertones on the high notes, or not knowing what to practice, or being bored doing warm-up exercises that your teacher says that you need to do, but do I really have to do them every single day? That kind of stuff. We're going to remove that frustration and help you have some more joy in your playing. Also, maybe you're looking for kind of the next steps in your journey. You're happy with where things are at and kind of how things are going, but you want to know, what should I be working on? What should I be developing further? I want to play better, but I'm not quite sure what the next step is. Or maybe you're pretty new to the instrument and you're just starting out and you want to have a really secure start and know that you're focusing on the right things right off the bat. And most importantly, it's the most effective path to building confidence and having the freedom to express yourself, because confidence and talent and performance freedom and all of that stuff that we want are truly learnable skills. And I'm going to teach you how to learn those and what to be looking for and how to develop that skill that leads to confidence and how to move forward. So that's why you're here. And it works perfectly because it fits right into my personal mission. And this is kind of my personal mission as an educator. This is my mission for Quick Start Clarinet, which is to inspire a deeper understanding by simplifying the complex, to minimize frustration and foster joy, so that we can make more music and develop the values that make the world more beautiful. So that's my goal, that's my mission, and that's what we're going to be doing in this presentation. So let's start by talking about why you aren't there yet. We want this performance freedom, we want this confidence, we want to be able to say, I'm a musician, I'm a clarinetist, I can pick up the instrument and make the music I want. So why aren't you there yet? It's certainly not from a lack of effort. I'm sure if you're watching this, you're interested in growing and you've tried things and you've learned things and you've probably made progress, but why aren't you quite to that level of confidence and freedom that you want? I think it's because you have the what's, but you're kind of missing the how and the why and the purpose behind what you're doing. So let's talk about kind of what the what's are. So we have method books, scale books, etudes, sheet music, all of that kind of fun stuff. And I bet you can kind of think to yourself, like, how many of these things have you bought before? And I bet you have a drawer that looks kind of similar to this. That's mine. Here's my duct taped together Rubank method book and my painters taped together Rose 32 etudes and all of that good stuff. And I'm sure you have those materials, but you're missing the how and the why to use them as effectively as possible. And there's other what's that might not be as obvious too, like going to band or watching YouTube videos or even taking private lessons. Sometimes those things are just the surface level. And you may have a teacher, I've had students come to me before that were like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I'm finally understanding things, because my old teacher would just kind of say, well, this is like the law of the land. This is like what the king said for why we do things. But you finally actually explained it to me and I now understand the purpose behind it. So especially if you're taking lessons and your teacher says like, oh, you got to do your long tones every day, or you got to practice your scales every day and just keep doing it and eventually it'll get there, then you're going to get a lot out of this presentation and it's going to be a different way of looking at things that I think will be very, very helpful. So here's an example of the what versus the hows and the whys, just on scales, just on one little thing. So we've all been told scales are good. We probably all know that scales are something we should be practicing. But if you're just picking up your instrument, playing your scales, and if it feels like you're almost like sight reading your scale book, or maybe you have a page of scales that your teacher has you working on, or maybe you found from one of my videos, you downloaded a scale page or something like that, and you're just kind of playing through that scale page each day, and just it again feels like sight reading the scales, you're not getting a whole lot out of them. Instead, we need to think about how we're doing it. And one of those hows should be doing it very slow, doing it very rhythmically, doing it with a metronome so that we can have the precision to the fingers. And we should be focusing on the finger motion while we're doing it and comprehending the note patterns that we're playing as well. And you may know that how, but you probably find it really boring. Like, oh, I have to do my scales now and get out the metronome and set it to 60 beats per minute or however slow and play through my scales kind of painstakingly just because that's what I'm supposed to do. But if you don't have the why, or when you figure out the why and you understand the why, that boring how suddenly becomes really interesting and really worthwhile. So the why for doing all of that is to gain coordination of the fingers. And when you know that's the purpose, then you can focus on that as you're going slow and it's not so boring anymore. We want to develop evenness of sound. You've probably been thinking about the fingers while you're playing your scales, but have you been thinking about the quality of sound and really focusing on that? And then, of course, understanding different keys and building musical patterns. So it's not just we play through the scale but we're actually learning how these keys work, and we're learning the pattern of where the fingers need to go when we're playing in a key. Not just when we're playing the scale in that key, but when we're actually playing music in that key as well, we're programming in where the fingers should go. So things like that. And now I could make this presentation just kind of building out a spreadsheet of what's and then how's and why's. But if I did that, that would be basically just another what for you to have and maybe implement, maybe not implement. But this is kind of the difference between that old adage of like, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him to fish, feed him for a life. I'm going to not just give you the hows and whys, but I'm going to teach you how to figure it out for yourself, because at the root of every how and why is what I call the pillars of progress. And that's what we're really digging into and what we're talking about today. Because when you understand the pillars of progress really well, then you can take anything that you're working on and go deeper with it and actually figure out how should you be doing it, why should you be doing it that way, so you can get the very best results out of it. And make sure that you don't miss the end of this, because at the end I'm going to be showing you something extra special that I think is kind of the special factor, the secret sauce, what I think maybe talent is to be considered, and kind of the differentiating factor between my students who are really successful and pick up things really well and make a lot of growth versus the students who take a little bit longer and don't seem to catch on so fast. And I call it the golden rule of greatness. So we'll talk about that at the end and kind of explain how it all fits into the pillars of progress. But definitely be sure to stick around so that you can see how to apply that. Because again, just implementing that one idea can totally change how you approach everything and the amount of progress you're able to make. All right, before I get too excited and too carried away, let me give you a quick introduction about myself if you aren't familiar with who I am. So my name is Josh Gu. I've studied with literally the best clarinet teachers in the world, the professor at Juilliard. I got my master's at Northwestern, which is definitely a top 5 clarinet studio, and studied with teachers from the very best clarinet studios as well, from the other of the top 5 studios. So literally the best in the world. I started Quick Start Clarinet in 2018, so I've been doing this for several years now and have really refined online teaching kind of to an art and a science to it. I'm a university clarinet instructor and play in several professional ensembles. So just so you can trust that the stuff that I'm giving you and this information has been proven by my work with students, comes from my very great teachers, has gone through my experience of playing. And just in case you have any doubts left, here's a little clip of me playing as well, so you can see I do really know what I'm talking about. All right, now getting back into the pillars of progress. So we have the clarinet pillar, the music pillar, and the practice pillar. And I think these are the only three core things that we need to be developing. There's a lot of nuance to them, and you can see how they kind of spider out. But I think if you really work on developing your clarinet fundamentals, your music literacy and fluency, and your practice skills to be more effective and efficient in the practice room, then everything is possible. So starting with the clarinet fundamentals, this is the pillar for you and the one to really focus on if you feel like you struggle with kind of a generally bad sound, kind of stuffiness, airiness, thinness, shrillness, tightness, whatever it is in your sound that you don't like, slow and sloppy fingers, crossing the break and having that kind of grunt or squeaks when you're crossing the break. Honestly, squeaks in general would be another one for this pillar as well. Heavy and slow tongue, where you feel like the articulation's hard to go fast, or you can never articulate quite as cleanly and as clearly as you want. Starting notes clearly with that articulation. Big leaps in general. The altissimo not sounding very good, or again sounding kind of thin and shrill up as you get into the higher notes, and getting those dreaded undertones or those grunts at the starts of the notes, especially in that kind of upper clarion register, so like that G just above the staff up to that high C, especially if you're trying to do that soft and staccato, getting those undertones. Those are all clarinet fundamental things that we can improve there. And at the end of the day, when it comes to the clarinet fundamentals, we just want to pick up the instrument and be able to make music and have fun with it, right? But sometimes the clarinet kind of has other plans in mind, and after wrestling with all the things, trying to get the reed just right, and messing with the embouchure, and the air support, and the fingers, and having to worry about crossing the break, and all of that, it feels like it's kind of time to get the hammer on. It gets kind of frustrating, and I will give you a trigger warning before I pull up this next little GIF. It will have an instrument getting damaged, so look away now if that's going to be triggering for you. But we feel like sometimes this is what we want. It honestly might be a little cathartic as well, not just triggering, to see that just like we want to get in there and smash the instrument sometimes. I had a student, in fact, who actually had a story like this where they were working on a thing and getting really frustrated and kept having the same mistake, and took a big breath to contain my anger, set my clarinet down quietly on a soft pillow, then glared at it with intense aggravation. So luckily this student held themselves back from quite getting out the hammer. But I think we can all relate to that feeling, right? Of just like, oh, nothing's working. This is so frustrating. And I can remember times growing up playing too, where I would kind of like kick my stand across the room because it was so frustrating. But there is good news. The student took a deep breath, cooled down, reflected, and figured out their problems. And that's the key, is reflecting, figure things out. And when you do that, you start to become aware. Down there at the bottom, this was a startling new awareness. Now I have a tool to observe and check my fingers, and know that, okay, this was the problem, and get to the root of it. And that's kind of one of the big important practice things in general, but it also applies to the clarinet fundamentals of we need to get to the root of things and figure out what's going on. So what is going on with the clarinet fundamentals? So when it comes to playing the clarinet, no matter how complicated of music you're looking at or working on, there's only three core things that you need to do. 1, sound good. 2, wiggle the fingers to the right place at the right time. And 3, shape the notes the way that you want with the tongue to kind of have the proper articulation. And that's true whether you're playing Twitch, the concerto that I played a little clip of, or if you're playing hot cross buns and just starting out. It's the same clarinet fundamentals. Sure, the level you're doing them at is different, but it's the same thing. So that's the things we need to be developing. Now, what clarinet fundamental work isn't is doing thousands of hours of finger drills. Finger drills can be beneficial, but you don't have to do thousands of hours of them. Playing every key in your Barramon book. Love Barramon. I will let you in on a little secret. I haven't done a whole lot of Barramon. I've dabbled in it a few times. I've played a bit of it. I've certainly worked on my scales, but not necessarily doing them in the Barramon way. But I still have pretty good technique because it's not about the what you do, it's about the how and the why you're getting out of it. So you don't have to sight read an etude every day, and you definitely don't have to sit there holding long tones with your timer trying not to pass out. Those things have their place And again, if you do them with good purpose, you can get benefit out of them, but they're not a requirement, and you're not guaranteed to get benefit from them just by going through the motions on them. What you need is the how and why. So let's start with the how to developing the clarinet fundamentals. The 3-step warm-up is my favorite method of doing this because it tackles those 3 things. We have long tones for sound quality and tone, technique exercises for the finger wiggling, and articulation exercises for the tongue wiggling. And when you stop and think about it, all of those exercises, whether it's the finger drills, the holding the long tones, the Barrymon scales, they can be broken down to these things. And that's why I didn't have to do a gazillion different books and play through everything and play every single note in every single method book to get good at the clarinet, because I did every note that I played with purpose. You don't have to play a million notes, but you have to play each note with as much purpose as you can get out of it. And when you start understanding that every fundamental exercise comes down to these 3 things, long tones to listen to the sound, develop the sound quality, have control over the sound quality, or I'll read the verbatim explanation here, find your best sound on simple note patterns free from any rhythm pressure. Or it's a technique exercise where you're becoming fluent in the note and scale patterns with rhythmic precision and refined finger coordination. Or it's an articulation exercise and you're shaping the vibrations of the reed with your tongue while maintaining steady air and embouchure support so that the sound quality is nice and solid. That's all there is to it. And that's the how. So that's the way you're working on these exercises. The what is the Barrymons, the finger drills, the Alberts, the Rose etudes, whatever notes that you're actually playing. The how is how you're approaching it and how you're making sure it's developing one of those 3 clarinet fundamentals. And then we have the why, or kind of the end goal of these things. So tone, we need to be able to start, sustain, and transition between notes with a desirable sound. Technique, we need precise, relaxed, independent, and minimal finger motion while keeping that sound really good. Articulation, getting the note shapes we want while again keeping the quality of sound going well and the quality of the clarinet playing. A way to think about this and to kind of shift how you're approaching your clarinet warm-ups and your approach to developing the clarinet fundamentals is imagine playing a C major scale. And you've probably played a C major scale, not concert C, we're not getting anything fancy, just a C major scale, concert B flat scale. And you can imagine like, oh yeah, I play through that. Maybe you play through that in your band as a warm-up or things like that. And it's like, yep, okay, there's the notes, there's the fingerings, great. But can you go a little bit deeper with that and think, is there a precision to my fingers? Are they moving exactly rhythmically in time? Is my hand in general, my hand position staying relaxed? Are my hands in a good position? Are they staying close to the keys so I can move my fingers minimally? When I go to the A key, am I moving that first finger independently or am I moving the whole hand up there? Those are all examples of where we can go deeper with this. And when we know that that's the goal, that's why we're doing scales, is to have that precise, relaxed, independent, and minimal finger motion, then we can start thinking about that, and then we start developing that, and then that becomes better, and then we have better control of our fingers. So hopefully that makes sense. If you're wanting more what's and feel like you need more to go into this, that is available in the free members area. So there's all kinds of stuff in the free members area is organized by these kind of clarinet fundamentals, music things, and practice things so that you're kind of nice and organized with that and have some stuff to dive into. But remember, as you're looking at all of those things, and that's why I wanted to make this video, is so that you understand it's not just about what you're doing and all of those great resources, but it's approaching them with the right end goals in mind, because when you know the how and why, everything's possible. Just like this student of mine who had one of these really magic moments, and I can tell the way she's describing it that this was probably her first experience with this kind of upper echelon of clarinet playing. I'll go on a quick tangent about this. I feel like there's kind of 3 levels to clarinet sound production and clarinet fundamentals. Level 1 is very beginner. You have no control over things. You don't realize that, oh, B is a more resistant note. The B right over the break is more resistant than the A right below that. So the B doesn't come out because you're supporting with the amount of support you need for the A, which isn't enough support for the B. So you're just are totally lost and things don't really work well. Eventually you figure out that there is kind of different resistance across the instrument, and you start being able to adjust for that. So when you're playing A and going to B, you know, like, oh, I need a little bit more oomph and a little bit more support to get the B to come out. So you do that, and you're kind of in this intermediate zone where you're adjusting for every note. The top highest level of sound production, I think, is you have enough support on every note for every other note to come out. So you can do like a 3-octave leap with no problem and not feeling like anything's changing. And I think this is what my student was getting at when she said, I was able to maintain good air support and steady air, stable embouchure, and all I had to do was wiggle my fingers and it all felt really good. And that's my goal. And that's what you'll find as you develop your clarinet fundamentals. When you're approaching your long tones and your technique exercises and your articulation exercises with that end goal in mind and kind of the how and why, then things start to settle in and you're no longer just playing through, going by kind of rote, going through the motions. You now have purpose and you have this end goal of it feeling really good. And she says that when I do my warm-ups, I'll be extra attuned to those basics and they'll be on my mind when I'm practicing, and my brain is going to be busy. And that's a beautiful statement, and that's how you know you're doing things effectively, is if you feel like your brain is busy. That's what we're here for, and that's one of the joys and benefits of playing an instrument, is it keeps our brains engaged and keeps us developing new synapses and new connections in there that make it really exciting to keep growing and developing. So if you feel like your brain is busy, then you're doing these things right. So hopefully that gives you some ideas and you're already like, oh yeah, I've been doing long tones because my teacher says to do long tones, but now I see the purpose behind them, and now I'm going to do them with so much more attention. I'm going to get my brain busy as I'm doing my clarinet fundamentals. And no matter what, it's only those 3 things. Good sound, good finger wiggling, good tongue wiggling, and you'll be set on clarinet fundamentals no matter how advanced of music you want to play. So that brings us to pillar number 2 here. This is our music literacy and kind of our deeper understanding of music. So this is the pillar that's going to be the most helpful to you if you're somebody who just like can't sight read, or you say you're bad at sight reading. That's a really common one of just like, man, I wish I could just pick up a sheet of music and just play it, or I wish that first rehearsal at band wasn't so embarrassing and I could keep up with everybody. So the music literacy pillar will help you with that. If you loathe the metronome, you know that you should practice with the metronome, but the metronome is not your friend. Things go fine without it, but you put the metronome on and everything falls apart. Or you're somebody who has to hear it first. You feel like you can play things pretty well, and when you play in ensembles, it goes pretty well. But if you were to look at a brand new piece of music on your own, be like, nah, I need to listen to a recording first before I can really figure this out. If you freak out on fast notes, you see a big run of 16th notes and just think, nope, can't do that. that's too fast. That's too difficult. You're overwhelmed with new music. You get a new piece of music and think, man, this is going to be so hard to learn and so much work. And it never sounds quite right. No matter how much you work at things, it's like, I think that was okay. But again, I try to put it with a metronome. It doesn't work. I try to play with maybe a pre-recorded accompaniment and it never quite comes together just right. And last but not least, you can play the notes and you play the right rhythms, but it's not quite musical. And you haven't quite figured out how to go from just like note, 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 note into making a phrase. Or people talk about phrasing and you're like, I don't know what phrasing is, man. I guess I just don't have that music naturally in me. It's not that. Phrasing is a learnable skill. You just need somebody to teach you the how and why behind it instead of just saying like, oh, better phrasing, do more phrasing, more contrast, need to phrase here. It's more complicated than that, but also when you understand it more deeply, then it's actually something that can be tackled and improved. Just like these students. I will read this one to you. Sorry, it got a little hard to read when I crammed it onto the slide, but this first one is students starting up band again, and it says, it's going to be so much easier now to learn this new music. You have given us the tools to approach new music more efficiently and more effectively. I'm feeling much more confident this year. So that's really exciting to be able to go into band and say, I'm going to be able to figure this out. I'm going to know where this is going. Or this other one, for the first time since I joined this band, I have just about everything under my fingers before the concert, which to me is huge. Yeah, absolutely huge. Ability to switch between key signature changes with less problems. And everything's just coming together so much more easily and more confidently because of this music literacy. So let's talk about what music literacy actually is and how you develop it. So this is a passage from Twitch, the concerto that I played a clip of earlier. And probably for most people at first glance are like, whoa, this is a little crazy. These are some pretty crazy rhythms. It's kind of jumping around all over the place. There's some low notes, there's some high notes, there's ledger lines you have to deal with. At first glance, this is intimidating. And my goal by the end of this, and when you develop these pillars of progress, these things become no longer intimidating, and you know, I have a system, I can figure this out, I know exactly what I need to do. Just like this student said, I have the tools to approach new music more efficiently and more effectively. So what those tools are, of course, are the pillars of progress. The music pillar is the reason system. Reasons is the acronym for rhythm, sound, notes, and style. And if you break it down, then you can figure it out. Because a lot of times when we approach something like this, we just think, oh, this is impossible, I can't do it. Or we just start playing it and hope we figure it out as we go and don't know what we're aiming for. But if you can break it down and you know what you're aiming for in the first place, then you're going to be in so much better shape. So let's start with the rhythm. This looks very scary. But if I just were to write it out like this, it still maybe looks a little scary, but it's a lot less scary. And looking at it like this, it almost gives it a sense of like being a rhythm exercise. And maybe you've done this before. Maybe you've thought, man, I'm not so good at rhythm, so I'm going to get a book on rhythm. And there's tons of books on rhythm, and again, they're really good, but that's a what? You've bought a book on rhythm, you've bought a book with rhythm studies, you open it up, it has lines and lines and lines of music with all these different rhythm patterns, which is great and is exactly what you need, but you're missing the how and why behind it. And you didn't understand that when you saw these rhythms, it wasn't just a matter of, okay, I'm going to do this rhythm, ba ba ba, ba 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 ba, ba 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 ba, where you just kind of go through the rhythm and do it. Or almost even worse, if the book comes with a CD and you just kind of follow along and tap along with the rhythms while hearing it on a CD or a recording. If you were just doing that, your rhythm probably didn't improve because you didn't know the how and why of, okay, I need to break it down, I need to analyze where the beats are, I need to use the counting to understand how the subdivisions fit into the beat and how the rhythm connects to the meter. And then I can put it actually with a steady beat and actually perform it for myself, not following along with somebody else, but for myself, creating the beat myself, having it be steady by checking in with the metronome, and then relating all of the notes to that. So that's how rhythm actually works. And you can break it down and it feels a lot easier. And if this doesn't feel easy and approachable, what if I were to write it out like this? This line, I think probably for most people seems pretty manageable and pretty doable. But when you understand how the rhythm relates to the beat, and you understand how counting and time signatures truly work, and you take the time to break the music down to that level, these two lines of music are actually exactly the same. It's exactly the same counting, it's exactly the same pulse. Even though the second one is easier, you can use the second one to understand how things relate to the beat better, and then go back to the first one and have it be so much easier. So that's another how and why of, instead of looking at music and being totally overwhelmed by it, we can break it down. And that breaking it down and figuring it out, that's where the learning happens, and that's where you develop. So rhythm is one thing that we can break down and simplify. And again, this is a pretty advanced example, so don't stress if your music doesn't look this hard. That's totally fine, but the same principle applies. You can take something that looks complicated and then break it down to just the rhythm, and you can usually figure it out. And when you really understand rhythm, you can go even deeper with it. So Second is sound. So looking at this, sound is very much related to the clarinet fundamentals, but sound is also an important component of music. Thinking about the quality of sound you're playing with, thinking about how you're shaping the sound, and also having control of the instrument fundamentals to be able to get the music out the way that you want. For example, if we look at here this C leaping up to this high B, if you can't do C to B really smooth the way that you want as a long tone exercise, then how would you ever expect that you can do it leaping in this complicated rhythm with this rest in between? That's going to be much, much harder. So we have to have the clarinet fundamentals in place so that we can then make the sound that we want on the music. Another example at that same point, or maybe even the next note, is articulation. Having the articulation control to start a high B or start a high D and play a staccato high D. Those kinds of articulation controls come from working on the clarinet fundamentals. And then on the music literacy side, we also have to understand that I want this to be very clear. Ba-da-bee, ba-bee-da-bop. We want to know kind of exactly how we want that to sound when we're starting on it. So both an intention with the music of how we want it to sound, and also the control of the instrument to be able to make it sound that way. Now moving on to notes, just another component that we can break down and simplify and kind of get in there and figure it out. First glance, oh my gosh, this is all over the place. There's all these really awkward leaps. It goes low, it goes high. Yeah, we're all over the place. But if I were to take these notes and exactly the notes that are here are in this line and I was to rewrite it, this is what it could look like. And if you look at this, this is just a C major scale without a low A. That's the one note that's missing in this one line of music is the low A. There are higher A's, but no low A for some reason. But it works out to be just a C major scale. So if you can play a C major scale up to high D and down to low E, then you know the notes to play this. Now all you need to know is the timing. And that's one of the big things and big misconceptions I think people have. And this is a key takeaway for you from this presentation, that if you want to take notes about these notes, you should never go through a piece just trying to get it under your fingers. You never want to be like, okay, I'm just going to like kind of play through this and E, F, B, C, G, F, E, B, E, F, G, B, E, F, G, A, B, C. There's very little benefit to that. That is extremely beneficial as kind of random retrieval of pitches, but you probably don't need that because you probably already know how to play a C major scale and you already know these notes. What you need for this piece is you need to know the notes in the context of the timing for this piece. So you should always be playing with rhythmic precision when you're learning something new, unless you're doing it as an exercise to get better at the C major scale. Doing this kind of just casually working your way through it will help you get better at the C major scale, but it will not help you get better at the piece. Doing it in time and trusting that you know the notes from your C major scale, then you can play this in time and associate the note with its position in the measure and the rhythmic timing. That will help. One other thing with notes that can go a long way to help too is, sure, if I were to reorganize this, it becomes a C major scale, but that isn't what it is at first glance. However, if we look at the groupings and kind of put a little meaning to the groupings, we can see there are little chunks of scales throughout. E, F, scale, B to C, scale, G, F, E, scale, E, B, E, kind of an arpeggio, E, F, G, scale, B, E, oh, this is that same kind of E, B, E arpeggio type thing. Then we have scale from E to C, leap to B. Oh, but here we leap to B, and here we also leap to B. So B seems to be an important note that we're leaping to. D down to B, scale. Oh, this time we leap to E. So far we've only leapt to E and B. Scale, A to G. This time we do leap to C, but the C could even be seen as part of a scale to this B, and then obviously B to A, just a scale. So giving a little bit more meaning to the notes by grouping them and kind of seeing how they logically group together. Now it's not E, F, B, C, G, F, E, B, E, F, G, B, and you have to comprehend every note. Now it's scale, 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 down, scale, up, and it has a little bit more meaning to it and is easier to comprehend. And that's, again, we're putting more meaning to things. We're not just looking at the surface level what, but now we know how it's working and where it's all going together. You can also do a little bit deeper level of kind of analysis and figure out why it's going there. So why is it leaping to E and B? Oh, that's because kind of this E and B harmony is an important harmony for the piece. But don't worry about even going that far. Just taking a second to break it down and be like, okay, what are the notes? Okay, now I don't need to work through the notes and get it under my fingers. I can just figure out the notes in time, in rhythm, and know how it goes for this piece. And now for our final component of music literacy is the style. And style is a little bit of an umbrella catch-all for everything else, but all of it does contribute to the style and kind of the character and the emotion of the music. So this is things like articulations, dynamics, that mystical phrasing thing, all of that kind of comes together into this style idea. And for this one, the dynamic's pretty straightforward. It's all forte. There's probably a bit of phrasing where as I go up into the higher notes, there's a little bit more energy moving up to there. But I think the real key to this is the accents and the articulation in general. And what style is all about is taking the markings on the page and turning them into something a little bit more meaningful. So instead of just like trying to get these accents in, I want to consider like what's the groove that's being created by these accents? Or maybe in the first place, why are there so many accents? And I think it's to create the groove and have kind of a certain groove to it. So if I look at this and I play it just as ta 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 and just kind of do it very robotically, it's not very interesting. But if I go deeper with it and see like, oh, those accents are there to create this sense of groove, then that has more meaning to it. And that's what this music literacy is all about. Take one component, rhythm, sound, notes, style, and figure out the meaning behind it and what you're trying to convey to the listener with it. So for the accents here, and for the style, it's groove, right? Be-ya-ba, ya be-da-ba, be-ya-ba-ba, ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-ba-da, be-ba-ba-da-ba, be-ya-ba-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba. And you can feel by having that in there, like, oh, that's fun and that's kind of hip. And taking the time to break that down and identify it makes it so that the dynamics and the articulation aren't an extra thing that I have to keep track of. I think that's a huge mistake that people make, is that, okay, I have to play these right notes and I have to play them at the right time with the rhythm, and then I also have to do these dynamics and articulations while also playing the clarinet with good sound, and it becomes really, really overwhelming. But if we can put meaning behind all of it, then it all goes into this bigger narrative. So even the rhythm of this kind of, the second measure there, 1 E, E and a, E, to 4 E and a, that kind of syncopation in there, that makes it a little bit more groovy. The accents make it a little bit more groovy. This kind of broken up scales where we have lots of little scale bits, but then we have some arpeggio style leaps. That gives it that sense of groove and that kind of bopping around. So now I'm bringing it all together and have this idea of how it goes, where I know the rhythm, 1, 1, a 2, 3, 4, and 1 E and a 4 E and a 1 E. I know the notes, ba da 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 ba da ba ba da da ba ba do ba da ba dee da. I know the style, I know the sound that I want, and it all comes together into something called audiation. And audiation is basically the same as visualization. Visualization is kind of seeing something in your mind's eye. So audiation is hearing something in your mind's ear and kind of in your inner ear. So the audiation for this, I'll do it out loud, which is technically singing and not hearing it in my inner ear. But what I want to hear in my head with this is that ba ya da ya ba da ba ya ba 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 do ba da ba dee da ba ba be da ba be ya ba be da ba do ba do ba. You've probably heard that saying of like, if you can sing it, then you can play it, which I think is generally a good saying. However, there are limitations to your clarinet playing. But I do know for sure if you can't sing it or if you can't hear it in your head, then it's going to be harder to play. You might get lucky and play it decently, but it'll be so much easier to play if you can hear it in your head. And that's what audiation is about. And audiation is the how of the music pillar. So starting with rhythm, being able to clap and count and then play confidently connected to the beat and the metronome. The sound, hear the clarinet sound that you want without actually the baggage of the clarinet getting in the way. So you can hear in your head there's no crossing the break that the clarinet in your head has to deal with. That's only the physical limitations of the actual instrument. But if you can start hearing it without a break when you hear it in your head, then you'll start to be able to do it on the instrument without a break. Notes, recognizing note groupings and patterns so that you can more competently move through that. And style, just like we talked about, where you put intention and meaning behind it. And then the why of those things is when you have that control of the rhythm to be able to clap and count and connect to the beat, then when you play, the listener will be able to feel that pulse and they'll feel more secure and confident. With the sound, when you know what you're really aiming for, then you can actually get that sound out of the instrument. And you can become very aware of what are the problems in your sound that you want to improve when you're working on your clarinet fundamentals. Notes, having those patterns makes it easier for you to comprehend as you're playing it, but it also, again, makes it easier for the listener to comprehend. Where if I played that opening passage as be-ya-ba, and I don't make it clear that E is kind of leading to that be-ya, be-ya-ba, ya-be-da, and the kind of scale pattern isn't there, then it doesn't become so clear to the listener. Or maybe a better example is the end of the measure, this scale, ba-do-ba-do-ba-dee-dum. If I don't make it clear that that's all ba-do-ba-do-ba-dee-dum, all of that is a scale, and it just becomes ba-da and kind of gets mushy, then it's again less clear and less easy for the listener to follow. So having those note groupings and meaning make it more comprehensible for you and for the listeners. And then for the style, actually realizing every detail of ink on the page brings it to life, gives it the character, gives it the energy. So for audiation, this is one of my favorites that a student said about it, that it's the gem I've been seeking. And it's kind of the Rosetta Stone that bridges the gap between music theory and actually playing, and I'm thrilled to finally have found the Holy Grail. So congratulations, you now have the Holy Grail of understanding music, which is this audiation. Just a real quick other tangent or little piece of background on audiation. There is a music learning theory is kind of a subject that I've studied a fair amount, and the creator of it, his name was Edwin Gordon, and his definition of audiation goes a little bit beyond kind of the Webster dictionary definition of just inner hearing, but Gordon says audiation is inner hearing with meaning. And I think when you add that component of meaning, that's when things really come to life. So it's just a little bonus to the Holy Grail for you. It's not just inner hearing the music, but it's breaking it down, it's putting purpose behind it, it's going one level deeper. Instead of just hearing these accents, it's seeing like, oh, these accents create a particular groove to the music, and that meaning is what makes it so you can actually start making music and feeling like a musician. So hopefully that's making sense and is feeling good so far. And that brings us to our third pillar of progress, practice efficiency. So this is the pillar for you that's going to make the biggest difference if you feel like you never have enough practice time, you're terrified of performing or exposed playing. You know that feeling in band rehearsal when all of a sudden it's just the clarinet section playing the melody and there's almost nothing else happening, and you're like, oh my gosh, like I hope I don't mess up. Or even worse, when the conductor says like, oh, clarinets, can I hear this part? Or by far the worst, when the conductor says, let's hear that one at a time, and you have to play all by yourself. If you practice properly, you won't be scared in those situations anymore, and you'll feel much more confident. Another sign of lacking practice efficiency, or what practice efficiency will help you with, is that feeling of, I can play this, just not in front of other people. It only goes wrong when I'm trying to play it for other people, or trying to play it in a performance, or for a recording even, is the only time it goes wrong. Every other time it's no problem, and then all of a sudden it is. Another sign or thing this will help with is if it feels like you're starting from scratch kind of every time you go to practice. And there's those persistent issues that just like every practice session, I squeak here, or this note goes wrong, or man, I figured out that rhythm yesterday, but now I don't know how it goes anymore. And last but not least, that feeling of aimlessness where you kind of are like, well, I want to practice now, and I know I have this music to work on, but I don't know, I guess I'll just sit down and start playing it. So that's what the practice pillar will help with, is kind of solving those problems. So starting off, There are three distinct phases to learning that our brain kind of has to go through to be able to perform something and actually get the meaningful information out in kind of a testing situation. A performance is a lot like a test. And that's why performance anxiety and testing anxiety are both a thing, because we're not secure that we're going to be able to get the information out when we need it. And the reason for that is most people spend most of their time just kind of poorly doing the first phase of practice, which is just the correcting of the mistakes. So when it comes to practice efficiency, does this kind of issue sound familiar, or this process sound familiar? You start by playing. Maybe it's a small section of a piece, maybe it's a whole piece, but you start doing your practicing and you start playing through something, and then you make a mistake. It's okay to make mistakes, that's part of practice. You make that mistake, you stop, you try it again, you still make that mistake, you do that again, and somewhere usually between 1 and 100 repetitions of doing that, it gets better. And I'm being a little facetious because I can absolutely relate to this process and definitely have experience with things going this way. But you stop, you make a mistake, you do it again, you do it again, you do it again, and eventually the mistake gets better. And you kind of repeat those steps. Once it gets better, maybe you go back and put it back in context, or you just kind of keep going on until you run into the next mistake and then do a bunch of repetitions on that again. And then at the end of the day, it all falls apart in the performance. Or the next day, you run into those same mistakes and you're like, man, I think I remember fixing this yesterday, but I guess I'm going to have to do it again. Or no matter how many times you go through fixing things, something new always springs up. And that's because this is the pointless practice trap. And the pointless practice trap is what happens when you have that feeling of like, okay, I'm going to do a thing. It went wrong. I'll do it again. It'll probably fix itself. I'll do it again. And the trap part of it is eventually it does get better. In that practice session, it gets better. But the next day, it's not so good. Or in the performance, it's not so good. But in that day, you can get it better again. But the next day, it's not so good. And when you think about the performance, you don't get 1 to 100 repetitions of each tricky part to play it right. You get the first time. The first time through is the only chance you have to play it right in performance. So we need to do more to our practicing than just Band-Aid fixes on it each day. So the solution is the how part of the practicing pillar, which is deliberate practice. And this is kind of similar, where you play through a thing, but we're adding 2 very key steps, the reflecting and the planning. Also notice with the do, if you read the words there, it's a small enough passage that you can be fully aware of what you're doing and the results you're getting. That's another trap of the pointless practice trap when we are only putting Band-Aid fixes on our problems, is we miss all the other stuff that's going on, and we end up putting on the Band-Aid fixes where there are problems, but then we never actually learn the easy parts well enough for them to be secure in practice. So in deliberate practice, doing a small enough passage that you're fully aware of what's going on really, really helps to get everything sorted out. Then the most important part is we reflect on what we just did. And in that reflection, we're able to assess kind of what went well, what didn't go well. And the goal of reflecting is to go deep enough until a plan becomes kind of self-evident. So the surface level problem, I squeaked on this. Why did I squeak on this? Maybe I didn't have enough air support. Okay, why didn't I have enough air support? Because I backed off my air on the previous note. That's a plan. I'm going to have more air support on the previous note, so there's enough air support there. Once it comes into a clear plan, then you do it and you test the plan. The plan is like your hypothesis. I think I didn't have enough air on the note before, so I'm going to play with more air there and see if that fixes it. You do it, and then you reflect. If it went better, then great. Now you know the solution. If it didn't go better, reflect again and come up with a new hypothesis to test. And again, this is kind of similar to the pointless practice trap, but what gets us out of the trap is that we're kind of solidifying solutions. It's not just do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again. Hey, it's better. Okay, now I can move on. It's do it again, test a solution. Do it again, test a solution. Do it again, that went better. That's the solution that fixed it. And what this allows us to do is we have this solidified solution. So the next day, when that problem inevitably comes up again, we know how to fix it immediately. And then we start getting in the habit of having this awareness as we play, where we can fix problems before they happen. And that's what separates the people who can do the difficult things easily from the people who struggle and fall apart in performances, is that anticipation of, I know the solutions to every problem that's going to come up. That's what separates experienced players from inexperienced players. So that's just step one and kind of phase one of the 3 phases of practice. The real magic happens in phase 2 and 3. So phase 1 is getting confident accuracy from simplifying down to smaller chunks and slower speeds and doing a lot of deliberate practice to correct the mistakes. Deliberate practice is probably the most effective way to fix mistakes in clarinet and probably anything in your life. If you have any problem, reflect on it, get to the root of the problem, make a plan of action, try that plan of action, and it's probably going to go better for you. So that's the best way to correct mistakes. But you can be doing deliberate practice through all 3 phases. So phase 1 is the correcting of the mistakes. Phase 2 is consolidating into long-term memory. And really the scientific term for this is probably encoding, but I couldn't pass up the alliteration with the 3 C's. But what this consolidating or encoding does for us is it's deeply engaging, deep mental engagement by using contextual interference and desirable difficulty, which I'll talk about more. This is about getting it into long-term memory, really, really secure. Then phase 3 is cueing the memories and retrieving the memory, which gives us kind of performance readiness from testing ourselves and testing the retrieval of the information through spacing and interleaving, which I'll also talk more about. So contextual interference and desirable difficulty is this really cool thing that helps our brain pay attention to what we're doing. So if you're wearing a shirt, I'm wearing a t-shirt, I always have t-shirts, but whatever clothes you're wearing, before I brought it to your attention, you probably had no awareness of the feeling of the clothes on your body. And that's because our brain very intentionally tunes out recurring stimulus. If you absorbed every piece of stimulus that entered your brain in a day, you'd be exhausted. In a week, your brain would explode. So our brain naturally tunes things out so we don't explode. And our t-shirt is a perfect example. But if you were to change from a cotton t-shirt to a silk t-shirt, all of a sudden that new sensation would be noticeable for a moment. Change to a wool t-shirt, noticeable for a moment. Change to a spandex t-shirt, it's noticeable for a moment. That changing things up makes your brain pay attention to the stimulus because it's a new stimulus. I think you can hopefully see how this relates to practicing, where if you're doing those 1 to 100 reps of just your brain's probably tuned it out already by my bad singing, partially because it's bad singing, but but it's also that repetition. Your brain is no longer paying attention to it. So when you're playing, just doing rep after rep after rep after rep, your brain tunes it out. It's no longer paying attention to it. There's a thing called the power law of learning, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, that says after 3 repetitions, the brain's no longer really engaged enough to make meaningful progress from it. So we need to change our shirts. We need to change to a different material so that we keep that going. And that's what contextual interference is it's changing things up. You probably are familiar with doing things like practice rhythms or dotted rhythms. So instead of ba-ba-doo-ba-da, you do ba-da-da-da-da, or da-da-da-da-da. That's contextual interference. You're mixing up how you're playing it so that you engage with it a little bit more and your brain pays attention to it again. You know you're doing contextual interference correctly if you feel desirable difficulty. That feeling of like, whoa, what am I supposed to do with this? Maybe for that little bit I was just singing, I'm going to skip the 2nd and 4th notes and then come back to them. So I'll play the 1st note, the 3rd note, 2nd note, 4th note, 3rd note, and then last note. Ba, be, da, bum. I think that was right. And that feeling, that's desirable difficulty. That like, how do I do that? Did I do that right? Because when we encounter desirable difficulty, our brain loves that. It's like, ooh, I need to figure this out. And then it's that figuring it out, that's learning. And we're keeping the long-term memory engaged because the brain is engaged in figuring it out. So that helps it to stick in long-term memory. And we're learning new things about it because we're having to figure out more of it. That's what builds performance confidence, and that's what gets us familiar enough with the material that we can perform it confidently. Then actually doing the performance confidently is a separate skill, and that's phase 3, the retrieval with spacing and interleaving. So this comes from the scientific principle of the testing effect, which says we do much better learning material if we test ourselves on it. The opposite of this is the illusion of mastery, or kind of the illusion of learning. And what the illusion of mastery is you can read something over and over and over and over and over again, and you feel like you're mastering it because you've read the words over and over and you're getting faster and more effective at reading the words, but you can't really comprehend it, and it doesn't guarantee that you're going to be able to apply those words on a test. Instead, we need to test ourselves. We need to read a passage and then say, okay, what did I just learn from that passage? Or take a passage and turn it into flashcards and study it with flashcards. The testing effect is perfect for flashcards, where instead of just reading a vocab list over and over and over and over again, you turn it into flashcards to test if you remember it. We can do the same thing in music. Spacing is the best way to do that, where you basically do music flashcards, and you could actually literally make flashcards out of your music, where you have a deck and it has random measures on it, and you pull out a flashcard that says measures 64 to 72, and then you play it. And you only play it once, just like you do on a test. You play it once and say, did I get that right? Did I not get that right? And then you let it sink in, and kind of your brain wrestles with that and figures out what it needs to do to get it better the next time. Interleaving is kind of a similar process, where instead of just playing something over and over and just working on one thing for a block of time and then the next thing for the next block of time, you kind of mix it up. So you work on a little thing for a little bit, you go work on something else. At some point in the future, you come back to it, and that coming back to it tests, can we get it out of our long-term memory? Are we familiar with it? It also keeps the mind engaged so that you don't tune out. It's like changing shirts every 10 minutes, so you keep the stimulus going of how does it feel to be doing this? Changing pieces every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes keeps the brain engaged and paying attention to what you're working on. And I think this practice efficiency stuff is probably the most effective and the most interesting out of all of this. At least it's what I'm currently been thinking a lot about, but it gets really cool results. So this student had a short week, spent 3 days hiking, but found that when they got back, things had actually improved, which is kind of crazy. You can take 3 days off and things get better. Well, if you're practicing the right way, it is actually possible for that to happen. And finding that this is better than the old school methods that I was taught in my flute playing days, where the smallest chunk was kind of a phrase and you're just hammering away at the difficult passages until they get better. Now you know why hammering away doesn't work and what you should be doing instead. This other student, I love how you've broken the behemoth into bite-sized fragments for me to gnaw with deliberate purpose and practice. Each victory bite over a chunk of desirably challenging difficulty gives me great joy, confidence, and comfort to take the next bite. Yeah, when we break things down, when we know how to tackle it with practice efficiency, then everything is possible. So hopefully that's making sense, how these pillars go together. I know that was a ton of information, but you can see how all of these are very key and very important. For example, if you have the clarinet fundamentals down pretty well, but you don't understand music and you aren't fluent in the language of music, then things kind of sound a little bit robotic. But if you have music down, but not the clarinet fundamentals to do the music that you want, then it sounds kind of sloppy and messy. You may practice really well, but you don't know how the music goes in the first place. So you're consistent, but you have these little inaccuracies and not quite doing exactly what the music says. Or maybe you know the music really well, but you aren't practicing effectively, so it comes out kind of inconsistent and isn't great in performance. Clarinet's really good, and you can play the clarinet well, but you don't practice effectively, so it kind of sounds unprepared. You're playing notes cleanly, but you're not playing them how it's supposed to actually go. Or you can practice really well, but you can't play the clarinet very well, so you're consistent. It just happens to be consistently bad. So that's why all three of these pillars are important, and you need to be developing them all. But when you do develop them all, things become fun, you play cleanly, you play accurately, you have good precision, you're playing musically and expressively, so it's really engaging to the audience, and most importantly, you feel confident because you've done the retrieval practice, you know how it's going to go in the performance, and you can express what you want and get what you want out of the music. And now, for the moment we've all been waiting for, the golden rule of greatness. Like I mentioned before, this is like the biggest kind of multiplier of success. You understand the pillars of progress now, you know what you need to be working on. This is going to show you even deeper how to be working on it and kind of shift your perspective. If you can implement this one thing into all of your practice and everything you're doing, it's going to be such a game changer. So where this comes from is honestly years at this point of me kind of personally deep diving into talent and how to learn most effectively and practice most effectively. I read books like The Talent Code, Talent is Overrated, Learn Faster and Perform Better, really fantastic book for music practice specifically. And Talent is Overrated specifically is why I put talent in quotation marks, because this book was about a bunch of different science experiments and kind of research studies that were trying to find evidence of talent, and none of them were really able to find this independent thing such as talent. Every single talented person that was studied put in a ton of work and put in a lot of hours and developed their skill and developed their expertise. And maybe in basketball, if you're tall, you have a little bit of an advantage, but even those tall players put in more effort to be a talented player than just an average tall person playing basketball. So yes, there's some advantage in some things, but it's not a big difference or a big deal. And when it comes to clarinet, I don't think there's really any physical advantages to clarinet. Maybe if your hand's too small to reach the keys, that might hold you back a little bit. Maybe a little bit about the oral cavity will change kind of the resonance of your sound, but it's not this natural talent that's holding you back. If you want to be a talented person, you have to work a lot and develop the skills. And it wasn't even just these mainstream things that I went into. I also read self-published books and even read dissertations and studies on kind of how to learn music as effectively as possible. And that's where all this kind of science study is coming from. But luckily, you don't have to do all of that reading. I really think this golden rule of greatness can be summed up in one really wonderful quote by Friedrich von Schiller. If you don't know who Schiller was, he was a German poet around the same time as Goethe. You're probably familiar with Goethe. Beethoven, like the Beethoven, said that for musicians to set text to music, the composer has to rise above the skill of the poet. And he was like, with Goethe, no problem. But with Schiller, how could you ever possibly do that? But eventually Beethoven did set at least a slight adaptation of Schiller's words to music, and that was Ode to Joy, the finale of his Symphony No. 9, which is probably his greatest work that he's most well known for, came from the words, or roughly the words, of Schiller. So Schiller's quote is, "Only those who have the patience to do simple things perfectly will acquire the skill to do difficult things easily." And this is the key to greatness. I think this is the thing that separates the talented from the not talented. And it's not talent, it's patience. And it's the patience to do the simple things perfectly that allows you to be talented. Here's my not as eloquent interpretation of it that makes it maybe a little bit more actionable. I have a little problem with patience to do simple things perfectly because I think it's impossible to do things perfectly. But patiently, patience the most important, patiently pursuing perfection on the simple things develops the skills that make the difficult things easy. So that's what I want you to be thinking about, is patiently pursuing perfection on the simple things. So when we apply this to our first pillar of clarinet fundamentals, it means doing an exercise like this. I could easily spend 10 minutes on an exercise like this, really getting into the sound quality, and doing 10 minutes really diving into this one exercise, just these 5 notes, would be more beneficial than spending 30 minutes mindlessly running through scales and arpeggios and all of those things. because I would be knowing the how and the why behind it. But it takes patience to do that. Then that's the golden rule there. That's the gold. That's the trinket, is having the patience to sit down and do something simple like this and really be mindful of it. But when we reduce the complexity of the music and simplify the music to something really simple like this, then the whole world opens up to the quality of playing and the quality of development we can get from it, especially now that you know the how and why of this is a long tone exercise, so I should be focusing on sound quality and thinking about the embouchure and the air support and how do I make it sound its very, very best. Music literacy, having the patience to do it simply. This, man, it's so tempting to just go through and play it and keep playing. But if you have the patience to break it down into the reason system, just clap and count the rhythm. Can you clap and count the rhythm with a metronome? If not, no wonder why you're having trouble playing it in time, or playing it in time with an ensemble, or whatever it is. Having the patience to break it down into its components, to simplify it down into the components, and really pursue perfection of perfect timing to the rhythm. Exactly the sound I want. Playing just that high B. B. And then the B to the D, B, D, and having that difference between an accent and an accent with a staccato. Having the patience to pursue that level of perfection, that's what makes the music sparkle, and that's what makes you sound talented. You have that understanding and that familiarity and that control to sound talented. The golden rule for practice efficiency. How do we have patience and simplify? This one is actually, I have a neat little tool for it. I call it the rule of 3 reps. And it basically says never play the same thing more than 3 times in a row. You can do more than 3 times on something, but you have to change up how you're doing it. If it isn't going well, then simplify by going slower or doing a smaller chunk. And I think this is where people usually lack the patience. They'll do a little bit smaller chunks, or they'll do things a little bit slower, but they don't have enough patience to go quite as slow or quite as small as they need. But the rule of 3 reps helps, where you play a phrase, this measure goes wrong. It'll probably go better. You kind of get in that pointless practice trap, but after 3 times, it hasn't fixed itself. Okay, simplify down to just that measure. 1 time, oh, that was rough. Again, another problem. Again, another problem. Okay, 3 times, that's all you get on it. Now we need to simplify. Let's try going slower. Smaller chunk, slower, smaller chunk, until you can do it 3 times in a row with no problem. You never need to do more than 3 times. That's the power law of learning that I mentioned earlier. After 3 times, the reps aren't that valuable. Once it goes well 3 times, or if it's just the whole phrase went well 3 times in a row on your first go at it, that's great. You can move on, or you can complexify with contextual interference, and you can move into phase 2 or phase 3 of practice on it, where you dig into it a little bit more. And that will also help you to kind of build it up, where if you've really simplified down to, instead of a whole phrase, you're doing 1 beat at half the tempo that it's supposed to be, you're not going to be able to do it fully at tempo, but you can keep it at half tempo and do it with dotted rhythms, so that you have to think about it a little bit more, and then play it backwards, so you have to think about it a little bit more, and then play it just fingering along with the metronome and air playing, so you have to think about it a little bit more. And that contextual interference and finding the desirable difficulty, that helps you to get more benefit from it. Then give that a day to sink in. This is actually the scientific term of consolidating, is letting the memories consolidate while you sleep. Then the next day, it'll probably be magically better, just like my student who went hiking for 3 days and things got better. That's because you're practicing properly and following the rule of 3 reps. So hopefully you're feeling confident about this. What you've been doing, you don't have to do anymore. No more going through the motions on warm-ups, just putting band-aid fixes on your music just for it to fall apart again the next day. Doing reps just for the sake of reps and having your brain completely tuned out as you play, and buying more and more method books and more whats and studying with more teachers and watching more YouTube videos just for it to not ever sink in or have any meaningful impact. Now you can do better. You know your warm-ups are about developing those fundamentals and developing the clarinet pillar. You can break down your music using the reason system so that you can be effective in actually learning it. And you can deliberately practice, so you're always reflecting on everything you're doing and testing solutions and solidifying those solutions. And you're going to put more meaning into the things that you're doing. You can take all of the books and all the information you have and take the information in the free members area that you have access to. And instead of finding more things, you have all the things you need. You just need to put more meaning into it. So there's less what's with more meaning. And of course, don't forget the golden rule of greatness. You're going to have the patience to break those things down and simplify so that you can pursue perfection on the very simple things that will develop your skills so you can do the difficult things easily. So all that's left is to get to work. I've dropped all the materials on you. You have everything you need to know. This is the same stuff that those students did to develop and grow their playing. All of those comments that you saw were people working on the pillars of progress. This is the holy grail, like that one student said. So you have the materials you need. You can take it and run with it. But just like if, say, I took all the materials to build a house and dropped those off in your front yard and said, here's all the materials, now you're ready to build a house, it might be a little overwhelming. You'd probably get there eventually, but it would take a really long time. And that's kind of where you're at now. You have all the materials, you understand how it works, and you have the stuff in the free members area. And if you work at this really mindfully and really diligently, I think probably in 3 to 5 years of really good diligent work, I think you'll get it all figured out and you'll be at that kind of confident level where you can really make music and have that freedom and the goal of what you came here for. And unfortunately, there is no magic wand where I can say, boom, you're a great musician now. I gave you the whole pathway to do it. You have the materials. But it's going to take a while, and that's just the nature of the game. However, I could give you a blueprint, and I do have a blueprint that will speed up the process. It's still going to take time. It's still going to take effort. It's still going to take the patience and patient work at doing the simple things perfectly for you to be able to do the difficult things easily. But I can make it a whole lot easier. So if that sounds interesting to you, then you'll definitely want to learn more about the Confident Clarinetists Club. This is where all of those comments from my students were coming from. This is where my students have been learning this. So again, you absolutely can go for it on your own. And if you're not that interested in becoming really confident and really a great musician with that freedom to perform expressively like you want, totally fine. Take your time with it. You have lots of good information. If you want to fast track it and have that accountability and really go for it, Confident Clarinetists Club is where you should be. So what it is a step-by-step roadmap that's kind of laid out in video lessons. Kind of similar to the stuff we were going over in here, but way shorter and way more actionable. So it's kind of, you watch a video one day, you do the action items from that. You watch the next video the next day, you do the action items from that, so on and so forth. With also community support, encouragement, and accountability. It's kind of similar to a Facebook group, but it's not hosted on Facebook, but you can comment, you can post questions, you can engage with each other. And then there's also direct coaching with me where we hop on Zoom, you say, this is my problem, this is what I'm struggling with, this is what didn't make sense in this video lesson, and I unpack it and break it down and diagnose it and help you get through it. But instead of me like going super in depth with it, I just wanted to highlight some more of what my students have been saying about it. So this is stuff from the course itself and kind of from the video lessons and that roadmap. This one I loved. Learning slowly and deliberately has really, really helped me, and not getting tendonitis while learning the music has been a major bonus. Absolutely a major bonus. That's another benefit of understanding the how and why. You're not just doing reps and reps and reps and reps, but you actually know what you're doing. And this isn't just from going slow. Going slow helps, but if you check out that first comment, I have everything comfortable under my fingers now, so I tried some things up to tempo and I was pretty happy. Learning slowly and deliberately has helped, but it wasn't just going slow. You're still able to go fast when you know the how and why and are putting meaning to it. And as I go through these reviews, it's not to like toot my own horn. It's to show you, first of all, It's possible to do this faster and better. And second of all, you can actually get some insights from my students learning as well. So you can go fast, and learning slowly and deliberately has worked for this student, and not getting tendonitis is a huge win. Also, another big win in that one is during band rehearsal, we sight read 8 pieces straight through, and I did so with ease. That's the power of music literacy that I've been talking about. This next comment I also love, this progressing on the rhythm thing after several decades. Even if you've been working at something for several decades, if you haven't been noticing tangible growth in it, then there's probably better ways to be doing it. And you don't need another what? You don't need to buy another rhythm book. You need to understand the how and why behind it better, and then you can progress. This last one, your step-by-step, day-by-day discipline and routine is exactly what I needed but could not articulate. Exactly. That's what we all need, is the patience. And the Confident Clarinetists Club helps so much with the patience to do it. If you go kind of doing it on your own, it's so easy to get stuck in the weeds of like, well, I know I'm supposed to break this down, but I don't really know how to break it down, and it kind of takes a lot of work to break it down, so I'll just kind of play through it how I normally do. Again, I can relate to that. I know how easy it is to do, but when you have a community and you're watching the video that says, do it this way, and then you're like, okay, I'll try doing it this way, and you only have to try it for one day, and there will be future lessons that kind of reinforce it, and all kinds of opportunities to keep growing with it. Here's some comments on the coaching sessions and the coaching with me. This class, the first one for me, was excellent, encouraging to see what others have accomplished, and I got some information which will help me right away. This is also a beautiful part of the community, is you see other people learning, so you get to learn from what other people are learning. You get your problems fixed. Fixing your problems helps other people. It's this really beautiful kind of mastermind situation. This other comment, my biggest insights this week came from last night's coaching call. This was a really good one too, where you can see how the student's going deeper into the how and why. The first was to remember that imperfections in finger motion are so often at the heart of clarinet problems. That's a solidified solution. We worked on crossing the break and stuff in this arpeggio, but we didn't just fix the arpeggio. Now this student understands the value and the benefit of looking at the finger motion and analyzing the finger motion, and can do that anytime they're crossing the break in the future on any other piece of music, or anytime that there's any other problem. That's a solidified solution. That's a how and why, not just another what or another quick trick to fix this one arpeggio. This is lasting solutions going forward. This was one I love, just kind of showing the community support. Somebody had posted a video for feedback in the community, and then another community member replied, I tried this piece and those runs were really challenging for me. You're playing them wonderfully and look so relaxed too. Some magic is happening in this group, I believe. And the other student replied and said, yep, this is kind of how I worked on it. This course is definitely helping. The structure was helpful and beneficial, and it's just so cool to see everybody interacting and supporting each other. And another example of the power of the group community. This one is a privilege to be in this group and see our progress as we embrace Josh's lessons. Well done to all these people who did their stage 2 finals. I loved all your stage 2 performances. I will decide on my date shortly. And the reason why I bring this one up is because you can again see that power. First of all, just the sweet, wonderful community we have of people posting and encouraging each other. Like, wouldn't that be awesome to have performed a piece for a group and have somebody make a post and say like, hey, I really enjoyed that. Like that was great. The encouragement is great. But better than that, at least for me from the teacher's perspective, is the accountability. Now this student saw those other students do theirs and she thought, man, I need to do mine as well. And that's the other benefit of having this group community working on something together, is you get the encouragement, but you also get the accountability of like, wow, I'm seeing how this person is succeeding and I want to succeed too. So speaking of success, what you need to succeed in the Confident Clarinetists Club: desire to build your confidence and grow your clarinet playing and build your pillars and build on that foundation. Patience to trust the process, and patience to, of course, do the simple things perfectly and implement that golden rule of greatness. dedication to be invested. It does take time, it does take money, you have to show up for it, but if you're dedicated to improving and you're serious about getting better, then absolutely this is the place for you. And of course, a positive attitude. I want people who are gonna post for each other and encourage each other, because it really does make my day to see that. What you don't need to succeed: tons of playing experience, not necessary. I have somebody who's brand new and getting a ton out of the program. You don't need more than 2 hours a week. There's coaching calls that come up about an hour. I say 3 half hours throughout the week to do the videos and implement the lessons. It's not a whole lot of time, and that's the benefit. When you know how and why to do things, you can do things way more efficiently. You don't need any sophisticated technology. The platform I'm using makes it all really, really simple. If you know how to operate a Zoom call, then you're in good shape and will navigate this no problem. And you don't need to be any certain age. There's nobody too young or too old to benefit from learning these skills and developing their how and why. So if you're excited about having the best year of clarinet learning yet, contributing to a community dedicated to musical growth, and becoming a truly confident clarinetist, then book your interview at quickstartclarinet.com/confident clarinetist call. I really think if you've enjoyed learning about the pillars of progress here and you want to implement that as quickly and as effectively as possible, then you should definitely book a call and see if it's the right fit. And it truly will be to see if it's the right fit. A great question is kind of, what is this interview like? Why is there an interview in the first place? Well, I only want students who will succeed. I'm not trying to enroll as many students as I ever possibly could. I just want to help people implement this stuff. And it does take some patience to do it. And I also want students who have a good attitude and who I enjoy working with, because I'm going to be working with everybody in the Confident Clarinetists Club a fair amount. So I want people that I enjoy working with. So that's part of the point of the interview, is I want to get to know you a little bit before you're just in the program for something as serious and as much dedication as is needed to really get the most out of this. But if you've watched so far, and especially if you've been taking notes, then you're probably the dedicated type who will do great. So on the Zoom call, we get to know each other a little bit, and there's really zero pressure. It's really not like a crazy sales call or anything like that. I'm a clarinetist and a musician. I'm not a salesman, so it's really just getting to know each other. I'll kind of ask about your background with playing, what you're hoping to achieve with playing, kind of what you're currently struggling with, so I can make sure, like, oh, yep, this makes sense. This is kind of where you need to slot in. This is how the Confident Clarinetists Club will help you, or not. I've had students who've gotten on a call for this before, and I was like, oh yeah, you like already understand this stuff quite well, and we actually ended up doing private lessons instead, because I don't think they need all of the information because they have most of it already. So now we're just working one-on-one to continue refining those last little gaps. Or I've had students who I'm like, yeah, maybe you don't quite have enough understanding of music yet, so maybe something else would be better. So it's really as truly like, where are you at? Where do you want to go? How best can I help to get you there? And above all, do I enjoy working with you so that we can contribute to the community and have a good time? If you go to that link and there's no calls available, no times available, my schedule is very inconsistent. I work at the university. I'm doing stuff with Quick Start Clarinet. I do stuff with family. I play in like 6 ensembles, and I have 2 ensembles that I conduct in as well. So I am a professional gigging musician, doing all kinds of different things. So my schedule is inconsistent. So check again in like 5 to 7 days. And if you're really worried that like there's just no time available, but you're interested, email me and we can figure something out. With time zones and my availability, it is all over the place, but we can definitely figure something out. So if the calendar at that link isn't showing something, let me know and we'll make something happen if you're really interested. Another great question is, how does the Confident Clarinetists Club work? Here's a kind of screenshot from the platform itself. This is School is the platform, School spelled with a K, which makes things very, very easy. So this is the Classroom tab, which is kind of your roadmap for where you're going to watch the video lessons. So you start with stage 0, you click on that, it has a whole list of videos, you watch a video, the video has notes with it, and you do the action items in the notes. You go on to the next video, do the action items in the notes. You get stuck, you have a question, you jump over to this community tab. Again, it's just like a social media platform. You type in your question, it gets posted, I respond, other people in the community respond, your question gets answered. This calendar shows the group coaching calls, and on those you see what time it is in the calendar. You click on it, it has the Zoom link right there, you join us on Zoom, and you're good to go. For the coaching calls, there's several of them through different times, so no matter what time you're in, you'll definitely find a coaching call that works. And I also have some kind of drop-in calls that float around, so you'll definitely find times. And if there's none that work for you, then I'll float things around to make it work for you. And then there's also kind of a linear progression to it. So you notice there's stage 0, stage 1, stage 2. Stage 0, we go really deep with the pillars of progress. So in this one, I talked about how rhythm is a component of music, but to go over all of the pillars in one presentation, I didn't want to make this a 4-hour video. So I break it down into different videos, and in the rhythm one, we actually talk about how counting works, how to relate to the beat, how time signatures work, that kind of stuff. So it goes much deeper with each component of the pillars of progress. Then you move on to stage 1, where you start implementing the pillars of progress on musical examples, you start learning how to practice, and you start preparing a piece for your stage 1 final. The finals are probably my favorite part of the program, where in each stage you're going to be working on a piece, and then at the end of the stage you perform your piece for the group live to get that performance experience and test how well your retrieval practice has been going for you, and then you graduate from stage 1 to the next stage. Stage 2, we're implementing the pillars, we're developing those fundamentals on actual musical examples and different exercises and video lessons. You're preparing another piece, you perform your piece, you graduate to stage 3, and we have more advanced music. And in stage 3 specifically, I tackle some things like, how do you finally play fast? How do you get things up to tempo? And we also really broadly develop your musical vocabulary so you can become really fluent with all kinds of different rhythm patterns, note patterns, all kinds of fun stuff like that. And then the big question, how much does this all cost? Well, it depends. That's another part of the interview and the call. Roughly, it's kind of similar to a year's worth of lessons. If you think about this, this is a year-long program. So you have a whole year to progress from stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and kind of implement all of the lessons. You also get a whole year's worth of those coaching calls where we're working together and you're getting all of your questions answered. So it's a similar investment to a year's worth of lessons. However, because it's not as time demanding, where it's one-on-one and like I have to get paid for my time because I have to get paid for my time to live and exist, I can be much more flexible on the pricing for this. I absolutely don't want the price to be the thing that holds you back from it, so I'm happy to figure out however we need to organize the pricing to make it work for you and flex on the pricing so that it feels at a good point for you where you're invested and you're showing up for it because you paid money and you're going to pay attention because you invested the money in it, but also it's doable and isn't going to be a financial hardship for you. So that's the quick answer on how much it costs. And the last question is actually a question I have for you, and that's very simply, where are you going to be a year from now? And I actually want you to like pause and think about this. Don't just be like, oh yeah, okay, where am I going to be from now? Am I going to do the thing or am I not going to do the thing? But like actually really consider this, because it doesn't make a difference for me if you enroll in the Confident Clarinetists Club or if you book an interview or not, but it could make a big difference for you. And that's what matters more to me. My mission, again, is to help more people enjoy making music more, make more music, make the world more beautiful. So consider, and just as a favor to me, seriously consider this. You learned a lot. The Pillars of Progress is definitely the way to go. You can go ahead implementing that. Are you the kind of person who's really good at kind of self-leadership and really implementing these kinds of things yourself? Do you feel like everything is clear enough that you can really go through and implement this for yourself? A year from now, will you have done that dedicated work and been really mindful, kept that golden rule of greatness going for that entire year and gotten the results that you want? Or probably more likely, you will still be figuring it out and you'll say, wow, that was cool. I kind of learned a lot. And for a couple of weeks, it'll be really top of mind, and then it'll start to fade into the background. And a year from now, you'll be thinking, you actually won't even be thinking about this at all. But a year from now, you'll be kind of more or less where you are now, thinking, man, I still kind of wish I was like really good at this instrument. And I wish I had that performance confidence to be able to just pick it up and play the music that I want. So that's one option. The other option, a year from now, you book an interview, we get along really well, I'm very clear about where you're going, and say, yeah, you absolutely will get a lot out of the Confident Clarinetists Club. We figure out what that's going to look like for payments and everything. You get invested in the program, you dig in there, you get connected with the community and get this encouragement from fellow clarinetists from all around the world. You're watching the videos, you're digging into it, you're learning new stuff, you're practicing in completely different ways than you've ever practiced before, and you can go on a hike for 3 days and come back and it's better. You have that rhythm thing that you've been working on for over a decade, and now all of a sudden you're finally getting it and it's making sense. And you do that day in and day out, or at least 3 times a week, but you really dig into that over a year, and by the end of the year, you're like, wow, I can like actually play stuff. I'm showing up at band rehearsal, and like it's the first sight reading rehearsal, and I'm sight reading through it and actually know where I'm going and know what I'm doing. And I sometimes squeak here and there, but I'm always able to know like what's the squeak from and what's the solution to the squeak. Maybe I can't immediately play the hardest music ever, but I can absolutely figure out how to work on that music and develop the ability to be able to play that music and learn the music and get familiar with it and break down the music and know how to count the rhythm and understand the phrasing and where it's going and grow from there. So genuine question that I really want you to pause and take a moment to ponder of, where are you going to be a year from now? It makes no difference to me what you decide. I totally support whichever you decide, but consider what is it going to look like? And hopefully I'll talk to you soon. Feel free to email me at josh@quickstartclarinet.com if there's anything I can clarify further for you. If you have any doubts or concerns or want to send an email first before we actually talk face to face, totally get it. No problem at all. But if there's any like inkling in the back of your mind of like, man, I'm really interested in this and I wonder what it would look like, go to quickstartclarinet.com/confident clarinetists call, book a call, get that interview set up so we can meet each other, get to know each other. Honestly, just as a side note, I always really love these calls. Even when it's people who aren't the right fit, it's just always so fun to like actually see face-to-face-ish, virtually face-to-face, see people who watch my videos online, because I assume that you know that I have a YouTube channel. If you don't know, I have a YouTube channel, the Quick Start Clarinet YouTube channel, and I make videos, and making this video right now, I'm talking to a camera, so it's always really satisfying to actually get to see and meet the people on the other side of the camera. So if you have any interest at all, book a call just so we can meet each other and get to know each other. If nothing else than that, I would love to get to see you and meet you. I hope and I know that you've gotten some value and some new perspectives and some new points of interest here. And you can see that developing these pillars of progress is the path to being talented. So go to quickstartclarinet.com/confident clarinetist call, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Have a great day and happy practicing.